everything that we've been talking about, like what's wrong with the WNBA, what's wrong with diversity, equity, and inclusion, what's wrong with this race agenda, what's wrong with this Black Queens agenda. And so he's written a story about Nike and why Nike has been reluctant to take advantage of Caitlin Clark.
Picture this. September 4th, 2025, basketball fans everywhere are checking their phones, hoping for good news about the WNBA's biggest star. Then it comes. 5 simple words that hit the sports world like a freight train. I will not be returning. Caitlin Clark, the player who turned the WNBA from a niche league into must-watch TV, was done for the season. Not from some dramatic injury on a game-winning shot, but from her body slowly breaking down over months of play. This isn't just about one player getting hurt. This is about how the WNBA's golden ticket became a warning sign and what it reveals about a league still learning how to protect its most important players. When Clark posted those words on social media, she didn't just end her second season, she exposed problems in women's professional basketball that nobody wanted to talk about. The numbers tell a harsh story. Clark played just 13 games out of 44 this season. Think about that. The player who brought record crowds, viral highlights, and mainstream attention was on the court for less than a third of her team's games.
The celebration is over. Reality is knocking on the door of the porta potty. The truth is finally coming to the light. The same light that is going to be dimming here in about 12 hours when Caitlin Clark is eliminated from the playoffs.
But here's what makes this story so important. Clark didn't just get unlucky. Her body broke down piece by piece in a way that has fans, analysts, and other players asking hard questions about whether this could have been prevented. The stats are eye-opening. Clark dealt with a left quad strain, multiple groin injuries, and even a bone bruise during recovery. She averaged 16.5 points and 8.8 assists in her limited time, but those numbers don't show the bigger picture. The Indiana Fever went 8-5 with Clark playing and 10-9 without her. That's the difference between title hopes and barely hanging on to a playoff spot. And if you're thinking this is just normal injury stuff that happens to everyone, consider this. Clark never missed a single game during her 4 years at Iowa or during her record-breaking rookie season. This was supposed to be her breakout year, her chance to build on winning Rookie of the Year. Instead, it became a lesson in how quickly things can fall apart when the foundation isn't solid enough. Drop a comment below if you think the WNBA could have done more to prevent this situation, because what we're about to explore next gets even more complicated. Now, we need to address the topic everyone's been talking about, but few have examined closely: the officiating situation.
Finally being proven without a shadow of a doubt. Caitlin Clark is a megastar. Caitlin Clark is a box office draw, while the rest of the WNBA, it is nothing but a polished turd.
This isn't about making excuses or playing favorites. This is about patterns that have coaches, players, and fans questioning whether the league's biggest star was getting fair treatment on the court. Let's start with what actually happened. Fever coach Stephanie White didn't hold back when she called the officiating terrible after watching Clark get hit repeatedly without calls. In one memorable moment, White delivered what might be the quote of the season: "Everybody's getting better except the officials." That wasn't just frustration talking. That was a coach who watched her star player absorb contact that seemed to draw whistles for other players night after night until her body couldn't handle it anymore. The data backs this up in ways that are hard to ignore. During her rookie season, Clark was on the receiving end of 17% of all flagrant fouls called in the entire league. Despite being just one player among dozens, one analysis showed she received 6 flagrant fouls, which statisticians calculated had just a 1 in 100,000 chance of happening randomly.
Well, it appears that Caitlin Clark fans have listened. Last night, I received the ratings for the first round of games for the Chase for the Golden Toilet. As expected, Caitlin Clark, she was able to draw even though she was competing directly against the early games in the NFL. And as expected, the rest of the WNBA was completely ignored.
But here's where it gets complicated. According to ESPN's reporting, foul calls are actually up in 2025, with teams averaging 18.7 fouls per game, the highest since 2017. Flagrant fouls are on pace for 52 this season, the third most in league history. So if more fouls are being called overall, why does it feel like Clark wasn't getting fair treatment? The answer might be in the difference between calling more fouls and calling the right fouls at the right times. When Clark took that inbounds pass against the Connecticut Sun and referee Michael Price stopped play for a review, something boiled over, Clark looked upset and had to be held back by assistant coach Brianne January. Later, she confronted Price before play resumed. These weren't one-off incidents, they were signs of mounting frustration that had been building all season. The league's head of officiating, Monty McCutcheon, has said that referees are held accountable based on clear standards, not outside pressure.
The WNBA's never had anything. Nothing. Cheryl Miller couldn't really move the needle. Candace Parker couldn't really move the needle. Now they have this woman, and she's made the WNBA relevant. And I'm like, why isn't she being promoted? And how did Nike get her at such a reasonable, wasn't it at 22 or 32?
$28 million.
$28 million over 8 years. Like, that doesn't add up to.
We own the stuff that we need to own, he said. But when your biggest star is watching games in street clothes instead of filling arenas, you have to wonder if those standards are working. Here's what makes this tricky. Speaking out about officiating costs money. The WNBA has fined players for criticizing refs, including Clark's teammate Sophie Cunningham, who got hit with fines totaling over $2,000 for everything from TikTok videos to podcast comments about officiating. When Clark jokingly tweeted, "Careful, you're gonna get fined," after a fan criticized the refs, it wasn't just humor. It was a window into the frustration of a team that felt like they couldn't even voice concerns without getting penalized. Let me know in the comments if you think the WNBA's officiating issues go deeper than just missed calls, because the financial impact we're about to reveal shows just how much was at stake. If you want to understand how much the WNBA depends on Caitlin Clark, don't look at the highlight reels or social media buzz, look at the money. Because when Clark announced she was done for the season, the economic impact was immediate and measurable.
In the early Clark era, Nike stock has tanked over the span, and the CEO just got ousted. By the way, though Clark got famous around 22, if you want to buy her shoe, you could be waiting until 2026 to 2027. He goes on to point out, like, Caitlin Clark's in her first NBA playoffs, first NBA season, and she's wearing Kobe Bryant's shoes.
Let's start with the clearest example, WNBA All-Star Game tickets. This wasn't just any All-Star Game. This was supposed to be Clark's moment to shine on her home court in Indianapolis as a team captain in front of what should have been a record crowd. Before Clark's injury announcement, the cheapest tickets were selling for $121, with an average resale price of $262, the highest in WNBA All-Star Game history. Fans were paying premium prices because they expected to see something special. Then came the announcement. Within hours, those same tickets dropped to $64. That's a 48% drop overnight. Nearly half the value disappeared the moment fans realized they wouldn't see number 22 on the court. But the All-Star Game was just the beginning. The ripple effects spread through every part of the WNBA's business in ways that showed just how fragile the league's recent success really was. Television ratings, which had soared during Clark's rookie season, took a major hit.
They don't even have a shoe for her. And it may not be till 2026, 2027. LeBron James had his own signature shoe his rookie year. So 20 years ago, Nike was nimble enough and had enough vision to see that, hey, let's get LeBron's shoe out here. This guy's going to be a big deal. They can't do this for Caitlin Clark.
The 2024 WNBA draft, featuring Clark as the #1 pick, drew a record 2.45 million viewers. This year's draft, down to 1.25 million. The 2024 All-Star Game with Clark participating set a record with 3.44 million viewers. With Clark sidelined this year, ratings dropped to 2.2 million. These aren't small declines. They represent millions of dollars in lost advertising revenue and hundreds of thousands of fans who simply didn't tune in without Clark on their screens. The attendance story is even more stark. Teams that had moved Clark's games to bigger arenas because of overwhelming demand suddenly found themselves dealing with refund requests and empty seats. Organizations that had bet on Clark's drawing power by moving to NBA-sized venues were left explaining to disappointed fans why the star they came to see wasn't playing. Colin Cowherd, who hosts one of the country's largest sports radio shows, put it simply, "Guess what I didn't talk about on my show this year? The WNBA. Guess why? Because Caitlin Clark was not playing. I led my show with Caitlin Clark 6 times last year." That's the reality of star-driven media coverage. No star, no coverage.
Mainly when they were playing against Caitlin Clark. WNBA players, they have finally experienced what it feels like to play in front of people who are capable of breathing without the assistance of an air compressor. With the chase for the golden toilet beginning this past weekend, I know the community of identifiers. They want to continue this celebration into the fall.
The league's financial struggles make these losses even more painful. The WNBA lost $40 million in 24, even during Clark's record-breaking rookie season. Clark's arrival was supposed to mark the beginning of financial sustainability, giving the league the momentum it needed to finally turn a profit. Instead, her injury-shortened season has left the WNBA more dependent on outside support than ever, with serious questions about whether the league can maintain its growth without its biggest draw consistently on the court. Here's the number that should concern every WNBA executive. The Fever were 8-5 with Clark and 10-9 without her. That's not just about wins and losses. That's about the difference between a team that sells tickets and a team that struggles to fill half an arena. If you're starting to see how one player's health became an entire league's crisis, hit that like button, because what happened next shows just how quickly things can change. So here we are, in early September 2025, watching the WNBA deal with a reality nobody wanted to face. They put most of their success in one person's hands, and that person's body broke down. Clark's final post of the season was as gracious as you'd expect from someone who's handled intense pressure with remarkable composure. "I spent hours in the gym every day with the singular goal of getting back out there," she wrote. "Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling." But behind that disappointment lies a bigger question that the WNBA can't avoid answering. How did the league let its most valuable player break down so completely? The injury timeline tells a story of missed opportunities. It started with quad tightness in training camp, something most athletes would rest to prevent further problems. Instead, Clark was featured in every event, every practice, every marketing push. Less than 2 months later, that quad issue turned into a groin injury. By July, that groin became a serious tear. Each step of the way, there were chances to slow down, to put long-term health ahead of short-term revenue. Each step of the way, those chances were missed. The comparisons to other sports are impossible to ignore. When Michael Jordan broke his foot early in his second season, the Bulls faced criticism for rushing him back too quickly. When young pitchers in baseball show signs of arm fatigue, teams increasingly use innings limits and pitch counts. Load management has become standard practice in the NBA, even when it means star players sitting out nationally televised games. But women's sports operate under different pressures. There's always the fear that if you're not maximizing every opportunity, if you're not putting your best product on display every single night, the attention might go elsewhere. The stakes feel higher because the margin for error is smaller. That pressure created a perfect storm around Clark. She was the player who could fill arenas, drive television ratings, and generate social media buzz. She was also a competitor who never wanted to let her team down even when her body was sending clear warning signals. The result was predictable in hindsight, but devastating in reality. A season that should have cemented Clark's status as the face of the WNBA instead became a cautionary tale about the cost of success. But here's what gives hope for the future. The WNBA has shown it can learn from mistakes. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert acknowledged the officiating concerns during All-Star Weekend, saying the league was on it. The medical protocols that failed Clark this season will almost certainly be reviewed and improved. Most importantly, Clark herself isn't going anywhere. At 23 years old, she has plenty of time to come back stronger than ever. The question is whether the league will be ready to support her properly when she does. The bigger lesson here isn't just about basketball. It's about how we handle our most valuable people in any field. Whether you're talking about tech companies burning out their best engineers Entertainment studios overworking their biggest stars, or sports leagues grinding down their most marketable players, the temptation to maximize short-term gains at the expense of long-term health is always there. Clark's story is a reminder that sometimes the most important decision you can make is knowing when to say no, even when everything around you is pushing toward yes. The WNBA will survive this crisis, Clark will come back next season, but the real test isn't whether they can recover, it's whether they've learned enough to prevent it from happening again. What do you think? Did the WNBA prioritize short-term gains over player health, or was this just an unfortunate series of injuries that could have happened to anyone? Let me know in the comments below, and if this look into the business side of sports opened your eyes to something new, make sure to subscribe for more content that goes beyond the highlights to explore the real stories shaping the games we love. Because at the end of the day, Caitlin Clark's 2025 season wasn't just about basketball. It was about learning what happens when the unstoppable force of sports marketing meets the immovable object of human limitation. And that's a lesson worth remembering, whether you're a fan, a player, or just someone trying to understand how modern sports really work.